Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Mythgard in Middle-earth. My name is Corey Olson, the Tolkien Professor, and I am joined, as always, by my friend Gryfflet, who's been here keeping Thane Uhtred and his wife. I'm forgetting his wife's name. What's Mrs. Thane Uhtred's name? Killian. Yes, Killen, rather. Yes, Thane Uhtred and Killen. He's been keeping them company here at their board. As you can see, he's almost done clearing his plate there. And I just noticed something while Gryfflet was hanging out with Thane Uhtred here. I think, let's see, yeah. Okay, so Thane Uhtred, on the one hand, the chair came up to meet Gryfflet's butt as he sat down while standing on the edge of the table. But I think that Thane Uhtred must have a strange idea of what constitutes a suitable chair for a hobbit. Those of you who follow Exploring the Lord of the Rings will know what I'm talking about. We had some discussion about Frodo's suitable chair that he is given at Elrond's feast in Rivendell there after his recovery in many meetings there, chapter 1 of book 2. But as I say, Thane Uhtred seemed to have a rather peculiar idea of a suitable chair, as that does not seem to me really suitable for anybody, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. I really don't know about the levitating chair, kind of balanced on the edge of the table, but like I said, I wouldn't call it suitable exactly myself. And yes, Druid's Fire, he has spiritual cushions. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not quite sure what to do about that, Gryfflet, but here we are. So, okay. We are proceeding. Thanks. First of all, my apologies. Those of you who follow my other broadcasts know I've been sick this week. This is actually only the second appearance I've been able to do. Oh, and I forgot to. I'm going to need like a tissue to be constantly wiping my nose. Oh, such a nasty summer cold this week. It's like one of those colds which is like halfway to a flu, where I had this not only terrible sore throat and congestion, but like fatigue and feverishness and all kinds of fun stuff. So it's been an interesting week. And then of course I then like also had some like fun emergency dental work in the middle of the week too. So it's just been that kind of week in the Olsen household as far as health is concerned. But at least things are getting better. My voice is stronger now, and I should be able to hopefully stay awake throughout the broadcast. That's my goal. So we'll see. If things start to go south on me, I might have to end a little bit early. We'll see how that goes. I need to end on time anyway, because I not only because Druid's Fire is back, but also because I gotta pick up my kid from camp again. Okay, so anyway, so I was about to deliver Eastmund's message. I'm going to think about this a little bit more. Let me go back to the message. So there were these ruffians, right, who seemed to be encroaching and doing no good to the people around. They, beat the farmer and stole his cows and various other indignities. That is, they didn't steal his indignities. They perpetrated numerous other indignities upon him. And then when we met Eastmund, he was saying, what right does the Thane have to, do all this stuff? And of course, one is tempted to say, well, because he's the Thane, right? But what emerges from his note, of course, is that the ruffian is not just rebelling against the Thane, but rebelling against the entire political system of Rohan, right? The free men of the wold have a message for you. Run, abandon your city. You have been duly warned. We were exiled unjustly by your decree. Which, again, it seems odd from one level, right? Because, of course, like, no, he's the Thane. It is just in the sense of being legal, right? But clearly what they are protesting against is not necessarily the justness of his decree, in the sense of like, Thane Uhtred, did you really think this through carefully, right? Did you weigh the evidence properly and come to a right decision? No, what they are challenging is his very right to be in that position of making those decisions at all, right? Anyway, so yeah, it was and you know, him calling them the free men of the wold, right? You know, they're not merely lawless, right? People who are saying we don't care about the authorities, we're going to live on our own and do our own thing and completely disregard your rules. He's going a step further than that, towards actual political rebellion. The free men of the wold do not heed any Thane, Reeve, or king. Gwyrendis, yeah, of course, needless to say, I'm thinking about Dennis the Constitutional Peasant as well. I didn't vote for you. Anyway, there are a couple things that are interesting here, right? One is that we can see an interesting... it's raising a really interesting kind of political question here, right? And it's particularly interesting in the way that this is being projected upon this town in Rohan. You know, namely, like, people here might possibly debate whether Uhtred is any good as a Thane, right? They may argue that he's a bad Thane. Maybe. I'm not saying I know that they would argue this, but I'm saying, like, one could imagine an argument. And I'm sure over the course of our journeys in Rohan, our ramblings through Rohan, we'll see many Thanes and Reeves who are bad, right? Who are just incompetent or corrupt in various other ways. But this is the protest here by Eastmund is of a completely different nature, right? He is desiring to overthrow the entire system. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? This is the very first village that we've come to, right? So, like, in village number 1 in Rohan proper, again, we've had some introduction already to Rohirrim society within the context of the Great River, right? And you'll remember that when we were especially, of course, the primary Stangard plot in the Great River, with the whole, and I'm already forgetting their names. What was it? Stanric and who was the slimy guy? What's his name? Sithric. That was it. Yeah, Sithric and Stanric, right? So with the whole Sithric and Stanric plot in the Great River, we could see both the way that the system was supposed to work, right? Stanric as representative of the traditional model and the traditional loyalty that one owes to the local Thane, to the king through the local Thane, right? And we could see Sithric, who was not only setting out clearly on Wormtongue's orders to exploit that system by saying, "I come here with a directive from the Thane, right, or from the king rather." And therefore I am in the position of Thane, or I'm kind of taking over Stanric's position, which is only after all a delegated position, right? So my delegation supersedes his delegation. So he's exploiting the traditional system, but he was doing more than just exploiting the traditional system. He was corrupting it. He was perverting it, so that only one of two things could happen as a result of Sithric's rule in the Great River, either of which would have been favorable for Wormtongue, right? Either they had continued following the old system, remained loyal to the king, and in doing so have completely undermined their military effectiveness so that it's easy for them to be conquered, right? Or to rebel against that, right? To rebel against the system, and therefore come into rebellion against Theoden. So in either way, Wormtongue wins, right? And discord reigns, and the strength in arms of Rohan as a potential support of Gondor and rival to Saruman and his forces is undone, right? Is undermined. So it's and I talked about this some at the time. I find that that plot and the way that was handled in the Great River and in Stangard in particular, really, really interesting and really, really fun. here, what we're seeing is similar to that, but it's not the same, right? I mean, Eastmund is not working from within the system, is not corrupting the system from within in the way that Sithric was, right? Now, we don't know. In fact, I come in, because of what we saw in the Great River, I come in with my suspicions about this this uppity brigand leader who seems to have far more grandiose ideas we know this to be a bit of a departure from the activity of the brigands generally, and as we've seen from the beginning, that is from the beginning of the game, right, from way back in the Blackwolds period, in the around the Bree lands and even in the Shire. Evidence of the Angmarim interference and everything. When the brigands start acting differently, the in-game suspicion has got to be that there's some organization going on. And of course, we've long since been within the overall influence network of Saruman, right? And as I've said on several occasions, one of the things that I find most fascinating about the lands that the game enables us to explore, right, and the new stories that the game developers have put forward as they have been exploring these things, really do a wonderful job of showing us and kind of teaching us what that reach of Saruman was like. We get a very much more limited view within the books of what Saruman is up to, right? But this idea of his influence reaching out through the Gap of Rohan, through Dunland, we know that he does have influence in Dunland, that basic fact, right? But the kind of plot lines we got in Dunland and the way that we saw him trying to impress in the technical military sense, that is conscript, right? Enslave, the way in which we saw that happening among the Dunlending tribes was really, really interesting. And to see that influence and the way that that's beginning to extend up into, not only up into Enedwaith, but beyond, even in the Bree lands, right? As the White Hand orcs and half-orcs start to infiltrate up there too. But of course, now we're seeing we're coming in from the other fringes, right, through the Great River and down now into easternmost Rohan, and seeing how he is trying to work through and against the entire system. So, band of uppity brigands who suddenly get delusions of grandeur and try to take down the current system, that seems kind of par for the course, right? We, I think, should be expecting Sarumanic involvement here, though it's to me an uncertain question so far as to whether or not this is Sarumanic or whether this is Nazgulish, right? Interference. Is this interference coming from Mordor or is it coming from Isengard? Because certainly out here in the eastern, in the Wold, in the easternmost reaches of Rohan, in theory we could be expecting one of either, right? Or either or both or whatever, right? Because anyway, yeah, the Easterlings we know under the direct influence and direction of Mordor are going to be attacking in through here. We just had some hints about that from our friend at the gate, that we're going to be exploring the the watchtowers and the Undeeps, right, to check on the crossings across the Anduin and see if the Easterlings are making any encroachments. I have my suspicions that perhaps they are, based on what we saw in the Great River. But anyway, here we have this group of brigands who is seeking to undo the system. My guess from this, having thought this through a little bit here now, my guess is that it's probably not Saruman. It's probably Sauron. I would guess this comes from east rather than from west. That is the influence on the brigands. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just a change in tactics. But I say that because the attitude of Eastmund and his compatriots over there seems very much more wholesale, rather than just converting, again, sort of twisting and perverting the system, rather than setting himself up as Thane. He is trying to take down the entire system and gut the village. I mean, he's warned them that he's gonna destroy them. They should abandon the city, right? He's gonna take it over or destroy it by force. And that seems more like we just want to get them out of here, leaving the frontier open because this is a frontier village, right? It's the nearest defensible place to the edge, and especially to the crossings of the river. So that would be my guess. I know we're gonna find out shortly, Hologro, but I like to think this stuff through before. I like to think this stuff through before we get there, right? It helps me to be able to contextualize more fully the what we actually see when we get there. Okay, so good thing I haven't answered any lore questions yet or anything. Start off with a little lecture on the where we are in Rohan in the game here. All right, Thanutrid. Let's see, no, okay, nothing new conversation topics here.
Welcome and well met,
okay.
my friend.
Fool Eastmund, he dares offer me terms of peace if I give up Langhold and the northern wold to his brigand scum. I will not send my folk away, and I will rally my riders and deal with the brigands at once. They should have been thankful for exile. It was a pardon. I will not be so forgiving next time. Okay. Uh-oh. The boss wants to see it.
What business have you with the road?
Really, Uhtred, I do not think you should make light of this threat. They have never poised themselves to attack our town, only to harry our lands and steal from the farmers. I do not like Eastman's language. Yeah, I thought it was pretty significant too, Kill, and I'm with you. And I think we should heed Gryfflet's words of warning. We should prepare to defend ourselves. Well, he didn't say he wasn't going to defend them. Yeah, but I agree. It's concerning. There's something else going on here, Uhtred.
Greetings.
Defend ourselves, they will never attack us. Oh boy. Okay. Why not, you ask? Because we will oust them first, as we always do. So here's Uhtred acting as if we're just operating within the same traditional paradigm, right? Not perceiving that an outside force is involved, which is, of course, perfectly obvious to us. Okay, I'm to leave those brigands to you. I should just patrol the River Watch instead, huh? Oh, I have a good feeling about that.
Welcome. Stay a moment.
I will think on the threats of the brigands, Gryfflet, but in the meantime, I would ask you to perform the patrol of the Ford watchtowers. Which always sounds like a car model to me. But we do this regularly, but I would like to keep my riders close in case those fool brigands get it into their empty heads to attack the town. I will welcome them with spears and arrows. Let them come. Yeah, not getting it, I think. All right, I'll go to the watchtower. So I have a bad feeling about this thing, Uhtred. I think you at least need to keep an extra hobbit around. You know, for extra protection. But yeah, see, JJ, it does sound a lot like Archit, where they didn't take the Black Wold seriously. And, you know, that's not strange, you know, that the change in the situation would not be perceived by those who are accustomed to what they feel to be the norm, you know? You know, these Black Wolves have been around for a long time, you know, and they've never been a real big problem, right? So why should we think they're a real big problem now? Unless you know that, you know, Angmar is moving and the Witch King is circulating among them and, you know, some kind of weird undead dwarf is involved. You know, there's no reason for you to think. It's perfectly rational for them to believe that there's nothing else to worry about. And this seems the same. You know, his confidence, it's easy to call it overconfidence, and it is, in a sense, but I don't really see any reason to think that it is, you know, really serious overconfidence. I mean, that is, it's rational for them to be confident, because they have defeated the brigands before. Exiling them was an act of mercy. Okay. I'm heading down towards the river. It's really bad lighting. I mean, it's night, so I can't see too much. I just kind of wanted to watch down across the river as we go. And as I go, let me return to the lore question I was in the middle of last time. So last week we were having a really fascinating discussion, which was originated by Sam Burke, about the dwarves and the rings of power, and we were doing a little bit of speculation about the actual power, like what in fact the dwarvish rings of power do. Where we ended was asking the question, essentially, hang on a second. Do I have to talk to somebody else at Langhold? I don't, do I? No, this is just the quest. I hate it when the origin quest is pointing me back to the town. Anyway, yeah, so we had just been trying to see what we could come up with answering the, to me, really interesting question of what would happen if a dwarf put on the Ring of Power, the One Ring. And I don't know. The immediate question, there are two immediate questions in my mind. How would the impact of the ring, the corruption that the ring traditionally wields over its possessors, traditionally I say as if there were a long and clearly documented history of this kind of thing, when indeed there is not, right? All we know is, from a small handful of instances, right? Bilbo, Frodo, Isildur, Gollum. However, based on the corruption that we see in those few cases that we do know, would that happen to dwarves? If so, would it manifest itself in the same way? And also the simpler question of, would a dwarf become invisible if he put on the One Ring? Would it work as an invisibility ring for a dwarf? That last one is not to me a no-brainer. And by the way, this is a bad sign. I'm thinking, I don't know that I need to patrol the watchtowers in order to guess that there's something kind of bad going on here, because I can see pavilions, and I've seen, upholstery like that before. But let's, by all means, check out the watchtowers. Anyway, it is not to me a no-brainer that dwarves necessarily would become invisible, because remember, the dwarves are resistant to the domination of the ring. What we are told is different about the dwarves. Oh, hey, Adbert here isn't the one I'm supposed to talk to. This is a nice little place. You've got to keep the wall is interesting, like why you would build such a wall when a tower would clearly suffice to give you the view that you wanted. I mean, the fortifications on the outside, like the spikes here, look as if they were meant to resist a cavalry charge. Is someone really going to be doing a cavalry charge up the hill? And if they were, would they not just go around? I mean, this is just built to look like it's meant to be a defensive fortification, like a wall that could be held. But it's pretty half-hearted when it comes to that. To have something you can stand behind and shoot makes a certain amount of sense, but it seems to me like either a little too much or much too little, to be perfectly honest. Anyway, okay, so back to the dwarves. So we know that what makes the dwarves different is that they were designed to resist domination. When Aule made them, he made them at the time when Morgoth was, was asserting his dominion over Arda in general, and Middle Earth in particular. So we know that Aule designed them to be resistant to having their own wills dominated by others. So what would that mean? Would it mean, are they made sort of constitutionally different in the sense that they would not even become actually invisible? Hey there, Mr. Watchman.
What business have you with the row you're in?
Okay. Alright, I'll just retrace my steps through the towers here. Instead of coming straight here, I wanted to come along the river to see what I did in fact see. Anyway, okay.
Our mission is dire.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly if that resistance to dominion would extend so far as providing them resistance. That they have, that creatures can have some kind of resistance to the power of the rings. We know. I mean, Gandalf suggests that hobbits are resistant, not to becoming invisible, obviously, but to the stretching process, right? To the fading process. Hobbits fade very reluctantly. Okay, so this guy casually says we've spotted movements on the ford. Easterlings most like, but it ain't no thing, I guess. So I'm just supposed to go and find out more about the Easterling movements. Yeah. Anyway, I guess probably a dwarf would become invisible. I don't think we have enough evidence to suggest that a dwarf who wore the ring wouldn't become invisible, though the invisibility itself is really kind of an interesting phenomenon, as we were discussing a little bit last week, but whatever. What would the resistance to domination look like? I can't think it would mean that a dwarf would be incorruptible by the ring. If they knew that, if they suspected as much, you'd think that it would have been easy figuring out what to do with the Ring of Power, right? You wouldn't give it to a hobbit to take to Mount Doom. You would give it to a dwarf to take to Mount Doom, right? Because the dwarf would be immune. So, it's all good. Clearly not, right? So I think that they are less able to be dominated. They can't be made into wraiths. Just as hobbits they fade reluctantly, dwarves don't fade. Dwarves don't fade. So they're not going to become wraiths. That's what I understand from because remember, that was kind of plan A with the Rings of Power, right? To bring the wielders of the Rings of Power under the direct dominion of Sauron in the way that the ring wraiths come under his direct dominion, right? So that was the plan for we're going to have 9 ring wraiths of the men and 7 ring wraiths of the dwarves was plan A, right? And that plan A did not pan out. We do not have dwarf wraiths because that's what wraithification meant. But that's what corruption, domination meant in that case. But the other effects of the ring, we know that there were negative impacts on the dwarves of the Rings of Power. That seems very likely, that it accentuated the elements of their character that were already there, but were not necessarily good. I think that with the Ring of Power, their own desire for power, their own desire to get what they want, would have been augmented. So would dwarves have succumbed to the power, to the corruption of the ring? I think yes. JJ asks, would dwarvish corruption be turned inward instead of towards Sauron? Well, yes, but that's true of everyone wielding the One Ring, right? Nobody wielding the One Ring becomes a wraith under Sauron's dominion, right? Not directly. They seek to become their own. Again, Gollum is much further along in corruption than Bilbo or Frodo, right? At least initially. But his corruption has not made him more subservient to Sauron, like the Ringwraiths are enslaved to Sauron, right? In fact, it makes him more defiant of Sauron. So the Ring of Power would make the dwarves defiant of Sauron. It would make them turn inward. That turning inward, that elevation of self, that desire to bring glory. So just as Boromir talked himself into glory, I don't doubt a dwarf would talk himself into wealth in the same way. He would see the ring as the way to achieve, so I'm imagining if, like, Thorin Oakenshield had found the ring in Moria, right? Here's the thing. Try that little thought experiment on, right? What would it have looked like had it been Thorin who found the ring? And I'm thinking the answer to that question is he would have seen the ring as a means to a glorious end, right? He would have taken up the ring and claimed it because it would have whispered to him, like he would have rationalized that it would give him the power to reestablish the kingdom of Erebor and to overthrow the dragon. Which, I wonder what would have happened. That's actually a really interesting thought experiment. Had Thorin Oakenshield wielding the Ring of Power come to Erebor, what would have happened? Could he have commanded Smaug? Would Smaug have obeyed? Would he have had to obey? Could he, Thorin, have compelled Smaug? I don't know. I'm not sure. I kind of doubt it, but, I can't imagine it wouldn't be any influence either. But again, although the ends would be different, again, his a theoretical Thorin Oakenshield ring monologue would not sound like Boromir's ring monologue any more than Boromir sounds like Sam Gamgee's, right? So that by itself is hardly surprising. But I do think that element of the ring, that corrupting power, to claim all power and assert dominion oneself, would certainly act on dwarves. I think the thing that would be different is they would not become wraiths. They wouldn't become thin and stretched. Would it extend their life? Probably not, because I think the extension of life is definitely part of the stretching process. So my suspicion is that a dwarf who possessed the Ring of Power, the One Ring, would not have become a wraith, but also would not have gained any prolongation of life either. Just a guess. Well, not exactly a guess. That's my conclusion, but I could be wrong. Anyway, better talk to Adbert here. He's been waiting for me here. East Wings are upon us. Okay, I wasn't going to bring it up, but I'm glad you did. They've gathered at the ford and begin to swarm the riverbanks on this side. Okay, hey, fending off. Let's do that. We have spotted Easterlings, right? A great bird circling overhead. An eagle, perhaps, but I find that I cannot bear to look at it for long, for my heart fills with dread. Oh, that sounds very bad, Adbert. I am loath to venture down to the south undeep to see what evil is afoot with our foes, but I know it must be something terrible. You have a stout heart. By all means, go take... You have a stout heart, but it was foolish. I like that. Sorry, that's... that quote, "You have a stout heart," is, of course, from what Aragorn says to Merry in Bree, when Merry is telling the story of how he went to check out the Ringwraiths in Breetown. I love it when we get little phrases from the books that kind of float up in the quest dialogue in sort of unexpected places. I really admire that, because although they're very careful not to just use the direct text, even when the direct text is relevant to the story, they still do a very good job of, as you would usually say it, speaking the vocabulary of the books, right? Using the terminology and the register and the language of the books. And that's one of the kind of purest examples, right? When the thing that he wants to say, there are phrases in the books, right, to say this thing, and he uses them. I like that. Yeah. Okay, let's see. I will not judge you for fleeing. Okay. All I know is that the Thane will not react without evidence. He is too practical to risk Langhold for naught but a chill upon the air. All right. I will head down and have some fun with the Easterlings. Meanwhile, I will answer another lore question. Let's see. Oh, Above Manway. Above Manway? Seriously? That's your handle? That's quite a handle. I'm not sure I would feel I could live up to that. But anyway, Above Manway says, I've seen quotes from Tolkien notes that the stewards of Gondor share some blood with the kings of Númenor. Do the stewards of Gondor have blood or are descendants of Tar Miniatar like the Gondorian kings? Yes. Now, the parallel here, it seems to me, is this seems to me a direct Númenórean parallel in the sense that so you remember that there was this division in the Númenórean line, right? Okay, I thought I vaguely remembered quests creeping up here. Hey, Easterlings, defeat bunches of them. Okay. What are they, white? Easterlings are spilling across the South Undeep, threatening the Rittermark. Defeat them all single-handed. Okay. Oh, we're going to be picking up more quests here. Okay. Anyway, so, what was it? Oh, yeah, the stewards. Right, okay, so in Númenor of old, we know that there was a division in the royal line. I don't mean the division at the end of the royal line. I mean, oh, hang on, a greater enemy? They're clearly allies of the enemy. Right. Yeah, as opposed to what? The pacifist Easterlings who just happened to wander through here as tourists? Anyway, okay. Oh, almost one-shotted you, man. That's embarrassing when that happens. Find Mordor steel on the Easterlings. Okay. Okay. So, right, as I say, division in the house. I don't mean the division at the end, of course. That is the division between the king's men and the faithful. When the folk of Númenor were like turned against each other and fighting in practically civil war there at the end. What I mean is when the eldest child was a daughter and the second child was a son, and so the royal line officially passed through the son and bypassed the daughter, but the descendants of the daughter, who were still therefore of the king's line, and indeed of the elder line of the kings, though no longer the ruling line, were also there. And that's, of course, where Elendil comes from. Elendil and the lords of Andúnië are the descendants of that first non-ruling queen. Yeah. Anyway, so that idea, that we have the lords of Andúnië who are of the line of the king but are not in fact kings or really any part of the succession, seems to be the idea that essentially gets replicated in Gondor, or it's similar in Gondor, right? We don't know as much detail about the early genealogy of the stewards. Like, I mean, we know it comes from Mardil, the good steward, but like, what exactly was his bloodline? How closely connected to the royal line was he exactly? Those things we don't have as much detail on that as we do on the Númenórean situation. But I suspect it to be kind of similar, that it's from a non-ruling branch of the royal family, and so therefore, very closely connected with the line of the kings, though definitely of their blood, though not of their not of their line, sort of officially. But that is important, I think, because we know that, like when we get to Denethor and Faramir, Gandalf will say that, the blood of Númenor runs nearly true in them. And, it's clear that that's a big deal, right? The blood of, you might say, like, as, above Manway, I think you were asking or suggesting before, aren't, like, the Gondorians, Númenóreans, like, is that even a big deal? But the answer is yes, it's definitely a big deal, because yes, all of the Gondorians, like Gondor as a political entity, is connected to and derived from Númenor in its identity, but it is certainly not true that all Gondorians are, have predominantly Númenórean blood. They're not necessarily predominantly Númenórean. There are a lot of a lot of the people of Gondor are the indigenous peoples of Gondor, who, were there when the Númenóreans arrived and who intermarried with them. This is one of the things that Faramir is talking about, when he is giving his kind of long exposition to Frodo, right? And that is, all of his talk about, high men and middle men and wild men. And the, sort of political incorrectness of Faramir's description there, I think can kind of conceal the fact that sometimes I think it's easy for us to get kind of focused on that image of like high and middle and low, and therefore what sounds like the sort of political snobbery, right, of Gondor. And I think it's more than that. It's different from that, right? We can kind of lose sight of what he's sort of actually saying, right? That when he talks about high and middle and wild, he's not like referring to just a class system, like an economic class system. He's not saying some of us are awesome and some others are like rustic barbarians and I think they're pointless and horrible. He's talking about their lineage, right? To him, those who are high are Númenóreans, right? The high men are the men of the West, who were different. They were just fundamentally, completely different from. I'm just making sure that Mordor steel is available on these dudes. Yes, it is. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So Númenóreans are high, and he says that the men of Gondor really oops, I went too far there. Really no longer have the right to be called high. And here he's not just talking, I think, about the sort of cultural decline. That's definitely one of the issues he's discussing. But when he says we no longer deserve to be called high, he's really kind of talking about genetics. By the way, is there anything? I'm just going to explore over here. There aren't any other. I don't see any other quest rings or nothing else pops up. Just going to kind of wander around here. See what we can see. Anyway, he as I say, he's mostly talking about genetics. The blood of Númenor does not really. Is it a moral distinction, Marielle? That making moral distinction between the high men and the wild men? Not moral, Marielle. I think he would say cultural difference. His speech about loving glory for its own sake does sound like a moral condemnation or a moral distinction, Marielle. The difference is a cultural one. That is to say, well, it is better to be peace-loving, to love healing and peace than it is to love valor in arms only, right? Only to value courage on the battlefield. That's there's clearly a moral element there, Marielle, right? But the Rohirrim, which he cites as an example of the ones who are kind of on the wild side, right? He's not critiquing them. He doesn't say, unfortunately, our neighbors, the Rohirrim, are morally corrupt and nothing good can be expected of them, right? What he's saying is we can't judge them by these standards, right? That's not in their culture. Like, their culture they've never experienced this. They don't even know, right? And so when a Númenórean, when somebody who does kind of know better, right, exactly, he does say it's unfortunate that we're becoming like them, but that's the point, Marielle. For them, it's a forgetting, right? They do know better. They do have this tradition that is founded upon the wisdom of the Númenóreans revealed to them through the elves from the Valar, right? They have, through their time in Númenor, through their time with the elves, through their time even with the Valar, even indirectly, they have been exposed to something else. They have been shown, a sort of higher path, right? Which he would call higher. He would definitely say there's a hierarchy there, right? That the path of, and again, this is, well, I'll come back to this in a second. There's definitely a hierarchy of paths there. Culturally, he's not judging the Rohirrim in the sense of saying, like, so the Rohirrim, they're not great, right? They're pretty embarrassing, frankly, right? He's not saying anything like that. He is saying, they have the best that they, the best that they have been given, but it is lesser. Above Manwë, it is absolutely not a relativistic viewpoint. And in that, it has that in common with Christianity. Yes. And of course, exactly what the Christians would say about something like Norse paganism, above Manwë, is not that we are better, but by revelation we know better. It's not our fault, nor is it a virtue in us that we know better, right? And more is expected of us. So if we behave like the pagans do, the more fault us, right? That's the theory. That's the doctrine, right? And that seems to be the doctrine that Faramir is suggesting there, right? So he's talking about culture. He's talking about, I hate to say he's talking about genetics as if that was like what was in Tolkien's mind. Blood, though, he is talking about blood. The blood of Númenor is sort of growing thinner. But yeah, Boromir is in a sense more culpable, right? Boromir is a symbol, an example of the Númenórean descendants who are forgetting their values, right? Who are forgetting the higher path, and who are so when somebody like Boromir gets wrapped up in personal glory and considers prowess in battle to be the highest of goods, he's missing the boat, and he should kind of know better, right? If he doesn't know better, where were his tutors, right? Where were his parents? So anyway, I definitely think, he is suggesting that kind of criticism of Boromir, but he doesn't. So I think in that sense he's more critical of Boromir, Faramir is, than he would be of the Rohirrim, right? The two last things I want to say about that is that we can see Faramir's assessment confirmed in Boromir's ring temptation speech, right? His ring-induced monologue, that desire for glory, which Faramir associates with a sort of lower cultural level, is the avenue by which the ring attacks him, right? Which seems to be a kind of endorsement of Faramir's assessment. And the second thing is Eowyn, right? And what happens with Eowyn. And this is the thing that frustrates me so much when people treat her final moment of healing at the end, as if this was Tolkien reasserting a simple patriarchal model, right? Like he's sending her back to the kitchens. She was stepping outside the traditional female roles and stepping into the masculine world, but then she gets shunted back into the feminine world of healing in gardens at the end. Except that's not feminine, that's not female, and it's certainly not lesser. That is higher, right? That is higher. Eowyn is achieving healing by seeing the relative worth, right? By saying, it is, I don't need to judge myself just on prowess in battle. I am rejecting these things, not because it's masculine or feminine, but because I am, because I see that there is something greater, right? I'm going to embrace life instead of death and glory, right? And that, again, that's a movement up culturally for her. And Phil, you're saying, but surely she was doing the same as Faramir. Do I think that he influenced her? Yeah. That he and Gondor and the Houses of the Healing influenced her. The fact that her first expression of this desire, right, is to stay with the healers and help them in their work suggests that, yes, the influence, not just him, this is not just like, I shall become like my husband and let him pull me up socially and morally. It's not just that with her, right? Has she been influenced? Yes, because she has been, she has come into contact with this thing which was not part of her culture, right? That what she got, that trap that she was, that cage that she was trapped in, right, was in part a cage which was constructed by her own society. And that's what she's breaking out of. So it seems to me to have is much more to do with Faramir's discussion of the different sort of levels of society than it does with gender specifically. Oh yeah, Phil, you say she wasn't shunted anywhere. She was doing the same work in Ithilien as her husband. Exactly. She was that fact, like. People who want to argue that Eowyn is being, neutered, like she's being, she was this, dynamic character who was willing to step outside these, the traditional restrictions placed upon women and find her way even in a masculine world, and she's being kicked out of that, and, the status quo is being reasserted at the end. Why do those same people not make the argument that Faramir is emasculated? When he wants to go to Ithilien and build a garden, right? I'd never heard anybody make that argument, but why shouldn't? I mean, yes, Phil, exactly. They're going to Ithilien to do the same thing, right? They share the same vision there. If it's a bad vision, which is all about traditionally circumscribed feminine roles. For Eowyn, why is it not also Faramir entering into traditionally circumscribed female roles? There seems to me a lot of kind of picking and choosing going on, if you see what I mean. It's one of the reasons why that reading has always seemed to me inadequate, very inadequate. Exactly, ALJ. She fought because she felt trapped and useless. She was choosing death. But yes, with her building Ithilien, she's choosing life and healing. Absolutely. It's an entirely constructive choice. And it's a broadening of her horizons. It's not a restriction of them in any way. Yeah. JJ says the people who argue against Eowyn's ending are those who love the arrow for its swiftness. JJ, I actually think there's some truth in that, actually. If you to say that Eowyn is being demoted again, that she's being shunted back into a feminine world, is to say that the world that she entered into, this quote unquote masculine world of being a warrior, is the higher level, right? That she was briefly free, right, and enabled to, under false pretenses, operate on an equal level with the men on this higher level, right? But now it's back to reality, right? and off you go into your woman's role again. That is to say, JJ, that role of being a warrior, right, of seeking death in battle and defining yourself by the glory that is achieved through feats of arms, that's the highest level, right, and that's now closed to her, right, because she's a woman. It's not the point at all. There's something much more. I'm not saying that gender's not involved. Gender is very involved with the whole Eowyn plotline. But what I am saying is that these visions of what is the proper end, right? What is the best end? What is the healthiest end? Doesn't have anything to do with gender. It's something that kind of cuts across traditional gender roles. Hoyabella, being a shield maiden, is Rohan the only one that has that system? We don't hear about that anywhere else, but even whether or not they have that system is a little dubious. In the very first time we get towards the mustering of Rohan, when Tolkien does his very first draft of that, The Gathering in Dunharrow, in the very first draft, he has Eowyn come forward, and she's gonna lead like a battalion of shield maidens into the battle. She like enlists with a whole bunch of other shield maidens, and she's going to lead them into battle. And Theoden's like, cool, all right, glad to have the shield maidens along, right? So Hoyabella, it's clear that at one point, in any case, Tolkien had this idea that being a shield maiden was a thing. Like it was like a standard career path, right, that you could pursue in Rohan. He seems to have moved away from that. So, when we get to everyone being shocked, right, from Éomer all the way down to Imrahil, right, everybody is shocked that a woman has come into, have even the women of the Rohirrim come to us in our need. It's pretty clear that by the time he gets to the final draft, he's decided that Shield Maiden is not going to be a standard career path in Rohan, and her undertaking to be a shield maiden is going to be countercultural and therefore have to be done by secrecy. Though, as I say, neither one of those things was in the original plan. Now, of course, in doing that, Tolkien was building off of, traditional ideas. People like Brunhild, right, in Germanic mythology and legend, Valkyrie figures and stuff. So, I mean, the concept of a shield maiden was certainly something that was out there, and it's clearly out there like Eowyn herself. I mean, it's clearly out there within the world of Rohan, right? It exists as a category. Eowyn knows what to call. She's not coining the name, right? When she says I shall be a shield maiden, she's not being like, hey, I know what I'm going to invent a neologism, right? I'm going to make up a new word. I'll call myself a shield maiden, right? That's not what's happening here, right? So there do seem to be some traditions, some legends within the Rohirric culture of shield maidens, right? So conceptually it's a thing, but culturally it doesn't really seem to be the thing there. But that's a really good question. But again, I think Tolkien had decided it was not going to be, a standard career path. Like, it's not the kind of thing that your guidance counselor would, pull the girls aside in, 7th grade and be like, so, shield maiden, non-shield maiden, what are you thinking, right, for your career options? That's no longer clearly how things work there. Anyway, poor Gryfflet is making up for, lack of lore questions last time with, poor Gryfflet standing around doing nothing for half of this stream. And the whole time we've been talking, of course, I have been seeing the lashing of the tail of what is obviously a fell beast on the far side here. So my question, of course, when we were hearing about the probably not eagle that the watchtower dudes were seeing in the sky here, was this the old one, or is this the new one, right? Is this a new one, right? And we have our answer, right? This is clearly a new one. This is not the one that was shot down. I was looking at the banners for a second. The banner is 3 crowns. Oh, darn it, the wind changed and now I can't see it. I thought it was 3 crowns or 3 birds. crowned inchworm. Huh. Yeah. No idea. Okay. I'm trying to... What are those guys on the ground? This guy seems to be cowering, which I can understand because... Or like passing out intermittently. Look, this dude on the ground here... He keeps trying to get up, and then the fell beast breathes on him again, and then, like, the fell beast halitosis just knocks him flat on his back again. Also not helping that this guy seems to be beating him with a stick at the same time. That's not good. Is that a man of Rohan being beaten? It's Eastmund! Oh, man. See? There we go. And the Wold Brigands. Uh-huh. And an Easterling soldier, and who's this guy? Another Easterling soldier. Okay, he's not a captured Rohirrim. Okay. Yeah, we do know they stink, Meryl. That's just what I was thinking. That's why I was assuming that that guy was falling over flat due to the stench. But then I saw the other guy beating him with a stick, which might have something to do with it. Well, okay. So I was right. I was right. My analysis was correct. The fact that Eastmund is here to overthrow the system and level the town rather than subvert the system and call into question the authority of Theoden King, like Sithric was doing up in the Great River, suggests that this was a Mordor, not an Isengard intervention. Okay. All right, so we're going to... Fell Beast of Mordor, but its rider cannot be far. We shouldn't be mixing with these Mordor creatures. Quiet fool, or they will hear you. Cannot take Langhold without their help. See, again, he's not wrong. The Thane isn't wrong, right? Uhtred isn't wrong to say they're not a real threat on their own. Oh, that's it? We're not going to get any more drama? Okay. All right. And that's it. I'm supposed to just... An unsettling alliance. Okay. So there was nothing else to see, right? That was it? All right. Back we go. All right. Let's see. Ooh, Funkadelica 91. Love your telepathy question. Been thinking about telepathy a lot lately. I'm going to punt that one for now, just because I'm going to get real sucked into that one, I know. Let me come back to see if I can knock out a couple other ones that were... I've got a backlog here, so I'm gonna look at some of my earlier ones to see if I can knock a few of them out. Okay. JJ, you had asked earlier on, is there any explanation ever given for the count of the Great Rings? 7 for the dwarves seems obvious. That is connected to the 7 fathers of the dwarves. But the 3 don't seem to go to 3 different elf kindred. I mean, again, 3 would seem to be an elf number, right? I mean, we do have several 3s among the elves. We've got like the 3 kings of the Noldor, or the 3, the 3 sons of Finwë. We've got the 3 different kindreds of the elves, right? The Vanyar, the Noldor, and the Teleri. There are different ways in which 3 could be construed among the elves in a similar way to the way that 7 is construable, right, for the dwarves. Sorry, just looking up at this banner while I go by. Oh, no, it's the falcon. It was sideways. So I was going to, right, crossed swords with the falcon over top, not an inchworm at all. Okay, that makes actually more sense. Anyway, so again, like the 3 is a number that appears initially, JJ, exactly as you suggest, to kind of make sense for the elves, except it doesn't. That is to say, it doesn't map onto them in any kind of obvious way. Like, when they distribute them, when Celebrimbor distributes them, it's not like he's not being like, okay, and one shall go to like one to the house of Feanor, and one to, which would be him, and one to the oh, hang on. I should probably brief you. Oh yeah, I should totally brief you.
Will you aid the horse lords?
Okay, Adbert, gotta admit, not sure why you're shocked that the Easterlings are allied with Mordor, but okay.
Our mission is dire.
Yep, I was standing down there like Horatio at the bridge, preventing them from landing, but I've got to
Mission
go
is
now.
dire.
A Nazgul of Mordor. Hey, you've heard of them. Warn the Thane. Yep, that was the plan. Oh, am I going to get a Warn the Thane quest?
Rohirrim have need of your services.
Flee while there is still time. Okay, there is indeed reason for alarm. Yeah, so, and sorry, I'm looking at some of your comments here. There's been some parallel discussions going on. So, yeah, Above Manway is saying you could say that, you know, like, so Círdan is of the Telerian is given a ring, Gilgalad, of course, for the Noldor, and Galadriel because there are no Vanyar there. Yeah. But again, like, that's kind of the same as saying it doesn't map onto the three kindreds, right? I mean, no, there are. Where am I going? That's just not the town. No, there are no Vanyar there, and Celebrimbor knew there were no Vanyar there, right? So he knew that when he forged the Rings of Power, he knew that he would have no access to Vanyar, and so therefore it's impossible for me to imagine that when he made the three rings, he was like, I shall make one for each of the elf kindreds, except the Vanyar shall have to accept theirs in absentia, and I'll give it to Galadriel instead. Like, that's the same thing as saying I'm not going to make one for each of the three kindreds. You see what I mean? So again, it's kind of close to that, but it doesn't really seem to map on really clearly. Instead, what it seems to be, the way that it seems to map much more clearly, is on just like a leadership level, you know? That is, it's not like it's particular kindreds or anything. It's just these are the people who are of greatest power and importance among the free peoples, right? Among the elves of Middle-earth. Galadriel, of course, Gilgalad, the High King of the Noldor, and Círdan the Shipwright. Sure, yeah. Who else was there? Celebrimbor himself, obviously. I said Celebrimbor. No, I didn't. I said Gilgalad. Celebrimbor himself, and then it was so yeah, but Círdan, I think it was Círdan who didn't get it originally. Oh shoot! Now I'm losing track. The original distribution was Galadriel, Gilgalad, Celebrimbor, right? And then Celebrimbor's ring is the one that goes to Círdan after his death. And then, of course, obviously it's Círdan. Círdan gives his ring to Gandalf, and it's Gilgalad's ring that ends up with Elrond. Galadriel's ring is the only non-hand-me-down of the set. So, anyway, so I don't see, although there does seem to be plenty available, plenty of symbolism available for 3 to apply to the Elven Rings, I don't see it. I don't see it actually being applied. No system seems to really fit. And as for the 9, why 9 for men? My sense of this is going to seem lame, I have to admit, is not that the number is symbolically significant intrinsically, right? That I don't think it's necessarily that Celebrimbor is like, okay, I need a certain number of elf rings, so I need to choose the most like appropriately elvish number, and that number shall be 3. And I need to pick an appropriately human number, and the best human number is 9. I don't think so. I think it's just these numbers are clearly significant. What exactly the significance is and where exactly that significance comes from is less clear to me. But anyway, it is clear that those numbers are significant, right? That 3, 7, and 9 are very significant numbers. And so, what kind of arcane rationale? I say arcane when I'm thinking of the designing and forging of the Rings of Power originally by Sauron, and under the instruction of Sauron. What kind of arcane formula are involved in saying that, like, we're not going to make 8 rings or 14 rings or 27 rings, right? We're going to make 9 rings. We're going to make 7 rings. We're going to make 3 rings. I'm not sure what the precise formula involved in there is, but it seems like the set of 9, the set of 7, the set of 3, it fits, it works. It seems to be important, even though we don't necessarily understand the importance. The fact that the 7 are given to dwarves, JJ, as you said initially, makes all kinds of sense, but I suspect that the cause and effect doesn't work in the way we might assume. I don't think he was like, okay, I need dwarf rings. Well, there's 7 fathers of the dwarves, so let's just call it 7, right? As if, like, had there been 6 fathers of the dwarves, he would have been like, I'm going to make 6 rings of power. I don't think so. Yeah, so, anyway, yeah, and I think I agree with Phil Marielle. The idea of projecting the 3 rings onto Aule, Manwë, and Ulmo almost works, but doesn't quite, and it's the fire ring that's the problem, right? Yes, Aule works with fire, but Aule is clearly of earth. I mean, earth is his thing, like mountains and metals and things like that are his thing. He uses fire, but he's not the Vala of fire. So if they were going to be, if when Celebrimbor sat down and said, I'm going to, how many elvish rings should I make? He was thinking, I shall make them in honor of Aule, Manwë, and Ulmo. I can't imagine he would have been like, air, water, and fire. He would have said air, water, and earth. Besides which, what about Varda? You could say Varda is the ring of fire. That it's Manwë, Varda, and Ulmo. That, to me, works better, to associate the light, Arda the Kindler with fire works much more for me than trying to associate Aule with fire. And certainly we know that the elves of Middle-earth think rather a lot of Varda, right, of Elbereth. But, again, I don't... Yeah, Marielle, exactly. That's really what it sounds like to me. To be honest, it was probably, I'm going to make myself and Gil-galad and Galadriel awesome rings. Exactly. It seems to me much more personal. But again, I would also add the fact that 3 is an important number, right? 3 is an important number. And yes, Druid's Fire, I agree that 1973 being the year of Tolkien's death was probably that the prophecy of the year of his death probably had very little to do with the numbering of the rings. So Phil was asking why skip 5, but hang on a second. Let's talk to Thane Uhtred first, and then we'll talk about the poor number 5.
Welcome and well met, my
So the brigands ally with the Easterlings led by a captain of Mordor. This is dire news indeed. I propose you evacuate. He says nothing in reply. He only stares gravely into the distance, which, in his defense, he's been kind of doing ever since we arrived, except he's mostly staring down. All right, war comes to Rohan. Love it. Well, the decision is before me. Do we evacuate and flee before those we exiled simply because they have a new master? Dude, you're missing the lead here. Or do we protect Langhold, the northern keep of the Rittermark? See, I hear ya. I hear that, like, this is your post, and, like, shall we abandon the post as soon as the enemy shows up? Like, that would be an argument, right? But shall we flee before those we exiled because they have a new master is a dumb way of looking at it, Thane Uhtred. Question is, should you beat a strategic withdrawal from Langhold here? You know, is what you would be doing by evacuating similar to what Theoden did when he pulled everybody inside Helm's Deep, right? Everyone in the Westfold there. You know, I would say yes, that's what you're doing. Don't try to stand up to the hordes of the Easterlings and their petty assistants, the ruffians, right? Okay, let's see. Oop, there we go. Okay, let's think about this. We'll think about this, then we'll come back to the number 5.
By brigands, and worse yet, their new Kundalar allies from the east.
Who's this? Mr. Unclickable. Alright. Alright, there's Heiberga. I hope she's not too crestfallen from all the thumping I gave her last week. By the way, I was telling my kids about the brigand bashing quest, and they were just absolutely cracking up laughing. They totally thought I was joking about the quest where you beat children with a wooden bat. They thought that was hilarious. Anyway, okay. These Nazgul of Mordor cannot be so strong as to lay low a strong city such as Langhold. Oh man, full of hail Rohirrim warriors and war steeds. Does the name Fornost mean anything to you, Thane Uhtred? Oh dear. How about Minas Ithil? Ever heard of that? Okay, let's see. Let's see. I will not let the brigands refute their exile while I live. Oh dear. The women and children are to leave, but the men of Langhold will stand and defend the city. Again, I can defend. The action is defensible, but the rationale is bad. Rationale is not good. Gillen. I will bring our folk to Harwick and seek shelter there. You need not fear for the safety of Langhold's women and children. Yeah, Heiberga wants to fight. She's a pretty good thumper. She was beaten on me pretty severely. I'm almost big enough to wield a sword. Right. You protect the city or die trying. That is our duty. But who will look after the other children while the men defend the town? You can count on us, Father. That's right, Heiberga. You're already the ringleader of the children. You'll protect them too? Ah, excellent. All right, Uhtred. You're a C+ Thane, but you're an A- father. Okay, take your war steed. All right, off you go. Thank heavens they left willingly. See them to safety. Okay. All right. You're gonna... You need a moment, Thane Uhtred? Okay. Now, you're right, Madman Modeware, and this is that's exactly the mistake that so many people make in reading Tolkien, is forgetting about the geographical distance and the chronological distances, right? You know, I'm saying, you know, ever heard of Fornost? Ever heard of Minas Ithil? Answer, maybe not, right? I mean, that was both of those were a very long time ago, and Fornost, of course, in particular, was really far away. Would the people of Langhold retain that memory? Do they have any context for understanding the Nazgul and what the Nazgul are? Even, like, what exactly do they know of Sauron? Remember, the oldest legends of the Mark are only 500 years old, with Eorl the Young. Exactly, right. So there, I think, again, the game is doing a really good job. A lot of people forget the fact that we as readers of the text, especially as readers who have access to things like the appendices and the Silmarillion and everything else, know so much more of the history of Middle-earth than any of the residents of Middle-earth in the late Third Age have any reason to know, right? Absolutely, Phil. So yeah, it's over 1,000 years ago that Minas Ithil fell. Absolutely twice as far back as the Ride of Eorl the Young. So, yep. No, it makes sense. And again, I like that. I like the fact that they are kind of remembering that. Okay. I also like the fact that Killen has a sword. She is pretty boss. Well, she has been really from the beginning. I liked you ever since the bread and mead, Gillen.
What brings you to these lands?
You need not pity me. My husband is strong and stubborn and does his duty with pride. Even if, I think, can we agree? For bad reasons? I would rather have him safe by my side, but that is not the way of the Rohirrim. That's right. Come, we must make towards the stables. We're supposed to take his war steed to Harwick. Oop. Hear the enemy's approach. Okay, is this all the women and children? Hey, is the woman with the biceps of steel gonna stay to defend the town? I hope so. This must be her. She's put down her bowl and picked up her blade. And she has such a disarming, like, pleasant little Mona Lisa smile on there. I mean, oh, it's the horse. Hi there, Uhtred's Warsteed. This magnificent horse looks ready to bear the Thane's family to the end of the world and back. Okay, the war steed is prepared. I'm a little fixated on the steed here. I'm a little more worried about the women and children. We are people of the Rittermark. Our spirits are not so easily broken. Father said we are to protect the children. And I know we will all be safe. These people are all good parents. The enemy is at the north gate. Oh, man. Okay, Killen. They're upon us. Go with Dala, we will be fine. They come from the north and we make for the south. And you've got the war steed. Run to the defensive Langhold. Okay. We're coming. Oop, that's a dead end. Oh, no, it's not. But it's not the way I was looking for. Here's the road I'm looking for. Okay. Oh, the battle is more than near. Hi. Okay. All right. Are we good, Uhtred? Got your back, man. Can I stealth myself? Can I do that? Yes. Oh, oh, hey. Okay, so, oh yeah, 5, the number 5. So, why is there not a number 5? I mean, can we all agree that, like, in, you know, a lot of traditional symbolism, the numbers 3, 7, and 9 are clearly significant, right? That doesn't seem, like, strange or bizarre, exactly. Lots of 7s, lots of 9s, lots of 5, lots of 3s, fewer 5s. There is not nearly as robust a tradition of the number 5 in sort of legend, with one strong exception in Tolkien's reading, right? The strong exception, of course, is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. So in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, the number 5 is the most important number. In fact, we've got, Sir Gawain's 5 fives and all of that. It's, oh, hang on. We still got another one in there. You guys got them? We're good? Anyway, yeah, I agree that 3, 7, and 9, and also 12 are definitely Judeo-Christian numbers. Very significant and important Judeo-Christian numbers. 5, just again less so. There's less of a standard tradition behind those. I don't think that Tolkien was going for some kind of like very specific piece of symbolism. That is, that like he was like, saying something like 9 for mortal men because of the hang on, whoa, yes sir, the Reaver of Khand. Oh man, we're applauding. Begone, monster, leave this town. I can't see. Oh, there you are. Sorry, Mr. Dialogue. You have not the courage to withstand me. Your hideous city burns. It's not that hideous. Take that back. My minions have taken it and lent their arms to the great eye. Surrender and swear fealty to Mordor. Uhtred responds that they are free folk and they make our own laws. I will never turn my soldiers over to the Shadowlands. You and your honor, Uhtred, where has it gotten you this Eastmont? Right, you banished us one too many times. It's a hard habit to break. You lack tolerance and have driven us into the arms of some powerful new friends. Revenge is so sweet. Oh, and there goes Uhtred, right? He's been stabbed. And a madness comes over the Langhold defenders. Oh, there's Dala in the chaos. Poor Uhtred. And the Reaver of Khand. Oh, man. Alright, you helping Higbald over here, Dala?
What brings you to these lands?
Langhold burns. Oh, this way? Alright. I thought this was the dead end, so I'm glad you guys are leading. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, like, why is 5 not considered, like, why is it not a really significant number? I don't know. I feel like that question is like way above my pay grade, right? Because I'm not deciding any of the symbolism of these things. All I know is that like the number 5 is certainly in the Judeo-Christian tradition much less used. Sir Gawain the Green Knight is really kind of an outlier in its use of the pentangle and its insistence on the 5 fives. Sir Gawain's 5 fives. That was not common. It was a very standout example, not only because it's so prominent in that story, but also because that story was so important to Tolkien, right? So it's a major counterexample to the 5 isn't such an important number argument. But it still seems to be, again, the evidence suggests the fact that there aren't 5 of any of the other rings, suggests that he is thinking more of this kind of symbolism of the symbolism of the numbers. But again, I was just saying, I don't see a concrete piece of symbolism exactly. That is to say, like, 9 is the number of the 9 planets, and so the 9 men who take up the rings of power are like each one of them stands for one of the 9 planets, or one of the 9 with 7 planets, one of the 9 spheres is what I'm thinking of, right? Or the 7 dwarves for the 7 the 7 wandering stars, the 7 planets, or like 9 for the 9 ranks of the angels or something. I mean, there are all kinds of 9s and 7s and 3s out there, and I don't see him connecting like elves, dwarves, and men with any specific one of those things, if you see what I mean. So anyway, that's what I mean when I say I don't suspect specific symbolism.
What business have you with the road?
We did make it out, Dala. Oh man, a grim day in Langhold. Thane is dead, the city burns. Survivors must make for Harwick, kind of like I was advising in the first place. Agreed. Okay, and yes, Phil, you're right, I do need to go to... Fortunately, my kids' camp is close by, but I do have to go there. Ooh, we didn't go too far, did we? Langhold is naught but smouldering wood and ashes now. I will make for Harwick to see the women and children there and give aid to the survivors. Agreed. A fallen club. I need to upgrade. I need to reforge my legendaries. I got all kinds of issues here. The weapon is a little bit intriguing. The shoes, less so. I wonder what this breastplate looks like, though. See, like a suit of armor with a picture of a suit of armor on it. I know, I mean, I get it. But still, not my favorite.
Will you aid the Rohirrim?
It's all over. If you wish to go and see if anything is left of Langhold, I will not stop you, but my heart cannot bear it. I make for Harwick, where I hope to be of use to my Thane's family. Perhaps I will see you there. For not forget the good you did for us while Langhold still stood strong. Okay. Next time, Langhold, Harwick. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to stay here. I'll end it here with Dala, and we'll head to Harwick next time. I was thinking of heading down to the gates, but I think I'll just wait for Harwick for next time. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining me this week. So I will not be here next week. I'm going to be on vacation with my family next week, so I will not be available to stream next week, but I will be back the week after that. So the week after that, I think it will be time for the War Pony in the next session. I feel fairly confident of that. Thanks for the fun discussion today. We had a kind of digressive set of lore discussions here today, and sorry I didn't get more game action in there, but that's okay. I'm happy with what we accomplished here. So anyhow, thanks everybody for joining me. See you again in 2 weeks, and stay tuned for Druid's Fire. Thanks everybody. Bye now. Thanks for joining in on my rambles around Standing Stone's brilliant digital adaptation of Tolkien's world. If you enjoy these adventures, please consider supporting this and other entertaining educational programming by donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.